Very warm welcome to everybody. I'd like to welcome Matthew Marnie, our Deputy Director of Digital, and soon to join us, Margaret Allen, our Pharmacy. We've got apologies for absence from Sian Richards, our Director of Digital. Are there any issues that people wish to declare today that are not already declared that have could have material effect on our agenda? No, thank you very much, Dr. Can I go to the draft minutes, please, of the board meeting held on the 27th of March 2025? Are there any matters of accuracy members wish to raise? Can I go to our action log from the board meeting of the 27th of March 25? Are there any issues you wish to raise from the action log? Returning then to the draft minutes of the board meeting on the 20th of March, are there any issues you wish to raise in terms of matters arising that we've not already placed onto today's agenda? No, in that case, are you content for me to sign off these as accurate minutes?
Yes.
Thank you so much. And I know it's a great highlight of the day, the chair's report. The report is what it is. I would like to say the two big tensions in our world. We are part of the NHS. And our partner organisations in health and in social care, there is a huge amount of pressure at the moment in terms of performance and delivery, and of course managing the financial situation. The Cabinet Secretary has met with senior leaders in the NHS, I think 3 times in the last 6 weeks, and we've of course had the Sloman report, all of which have implications for us as an organisation, HEIW. The second sort of tension in the world, which I think is ubiquitous across the UK, and that's the higher education sector. And primarily as an education and training body, clearly, we are cognizant of the financial and sustainability agendas that are going on in our colleagues in higher education. Perhaps the most recent example of this has been the Cardiff University consultation, and work is going on to look at how we support actions there. I just want to point out that as an education body, we have to be very interested about the student experience. We have to be really focused that these good people who come into training are our future workforce. And the very start of their journey in their clinical careers is a very important point. And so our expectations are to support these people and make sure that the quality and sustainability of the courses is there for them. And the beneficiaries of that will be not just them as individuals, but the NHS and social care going forward. On today's agenda, we've got some great examples of what this organisation does, and also a view to the future, what the organisation could be doing. I'll go to that first, the start off of the education strategy. Looking forwards, it actually is one of the, I think, a really important piece of work, and we look forward over the coming years to see how that develops. The other thing is you'll see that the pharmacy paper today actually demonstrates how we affect change, not just in Wales, but affect and influence outside of Wales. So I think those are two things I'd like to highlight and thank the teams that are working on these things. finally, I've had my appraisal, end of year appraisal with the Cabinet Secretary. Alex has completed her PDR reviews with the exec team, and we've had our end of year conversation, and we're setting the objectives going forward. I'd like to say that the amount of work and the way the organisation has developed and the individuals are developing, it's really pleasing to see. These are challenging times in which to lead the NHS and to be involved, but it is a privilege to be involved. I'm halfway through the independent member reviews, and I have to say that the way that the newer independent members have come into the board, we're always grateful for the contribution from our predecessors, but I'm very grateful to our new members. We are settling in, and we will continue to develop. And today, Alan, this is your first formal board meeting.
Yes.
Yeah, and you have been in one. You joined as an observer, brave soul, in the previous meeting. So welcome. I think that's all I wanted to say, apart from the chair's actions. We took 2 chair's actions at a recent remuneration committee. All board members were there for that. And with their support, I took the chair's actions as defined within the report, and I'm asking you to formally ratify those chair's actions.
Yes.
Thank you so much. Alex, Chief Executive report.
Thanks, Chair. I'm not going to pick up many items in the report other than to say improving workforce plan in NHS Wales. The paper, for whatever reason, does not make it onto the agenda, so I apologise for that, and I will send that around. It was for information anyway, but some really, I think, interesting and important work going on in how we're developing workforce planning support and resources for the system rather than developing our own workforce plan. So I will share that with board members for information. Apologies for that. And the only other thing to update on yesterday was we had a joint meeting with our colleagues in Public Health Wales, and this is in relation to one of the objectives in our INTP related to how we really develop a workforce that is geared up to deliver preventative services. So that was very much the focus of the conversation yesterday. How do we make sure we're building prevention into education and training? How do we develop a workforce that is focused on population health intervention? How do we embed it in our leadership development programmes? So that's a really useful conversation, and some actions are coming out of that we'll be able to update the board on during the year. We're also doing a linked piece of work with them on how could we combine our efforts to really support workforce wellbeing. That'll be something else that we'll bring back to the board in the course of the year, but a really good collaborative session yesterday with Public Health Wales. So I wasn't going to mention anything else from the report. It's all there, and many of the reports will come up later on the agenda. So happy to take any questions.
Any questions for Alex? Okay, so thank you for that. Now then, for today's part 3, I'd like to take Margaret Allen's contribution, which is a presentation, followed by a paper, 3.5. Margaret, this is your last board meeting.
It is.
It is.
Chair, and thank you for the invites.
It's an absolute pleasure to invite you to this. Yeah, go on, off you go.
Oh, right, okay. No pressure. Just as well I was here, because I wasn't expecting this for another 3/4 of an hour, but thank you very much. So thank you for inviting me today. I think this is, for me, in 10-15 minutes, my professional life and leadership and my team's work over the last 7 years. So I've got to try and condense it, but also to show you not the size of what we've done, but the difference that's made both to patients and the NHS in general. Just so that you know, I first of all started in 2018 when I was determined pharmacy was going to be in this organisation. We weren't going to be included. And I thought, I'm not having that. So I made sure that I got my feet under the table. And I'm hoping, as I go through this presentation, I think what HEIW has allowed me as a leader to do is to really, really make a difference, not only through pharmacy, but patients in the NHS in Wales. So big thank you at the beginning that the Health Minister recognised we needed to be here, and for all the support that I had to be able to do what we've managed to achieve. So first of all, I just wanted to, for those of you who weren't on the journey with us right at the beginning, it all started in 2019, and that was literally 6 months after HEIW had been formed, and we had business case accepted in 2019 for a significant change to what was then the pre-registration programme for our pharmacists who finished graduation and did a year before they registered. It was innovative, leading. It was a different way of employing people, of recruiting people, but fundamentally the model of changing was multi-sector. Historically, that had been single sector, either in community or hospital the whole year. And this was about training across all three major sectors: GP practice, community and hospital. As I go through this programme of change, at this point, I have to let you know that everybody was, why are you doing this? What's the point? We like what we've got, we don't want to change, etc., etc. So whilst it's been hugely successful, that process of change with stakeholders and partners will be a continuing theme through this presentation, that the hard work, the real hard work that we put in engaging our partners and stakeholders through that process of change has enabled us to do even more change as we've gone over the next 5 years. So we started that journey, we got the business case and we went, oh my goodness, then we've got to do it. So we did get on and do it. But then in August 2021, the regulator decided to throw another curveball in and say, do you know what, we're going to change the whole of the learning programme from the point of coming into the undergraduate right the way through to registration. So thank you very much, regulator. We're in the process of one change and now we've got another even bigger change. But it was really, really exciting because, as you can see there, it was taking us more than 8 years to become prescribers. And as experts in medicines, we've always said, why would we not be prescribing medicines? So the idea of this was, instead of taking 8 years, it was going to take us 5 years. Well, that's good, isn't it? That's good news. But then you've got to think about, gosh, how do we then actually sort of bring all that together? Okay, somebody's doing my slides, I presume. Next slide, please. I don't know who's doing it. Okay, thank you. So we thought, oh my gosh, what are we going to do? So me and another, there was not a very small team of us then, said, right, we've got to do a strategic outline case. So we developed a strategic outline case, which if you wish to read at some point is something like 40 pages long, but went to Welsh Government. We are starting with something that's never been done before. So all of this was like, this is what we think is the right thing to do. This is what we think is the right thing to do it. And also, this is the money we need to do it. So that strategic outline case was asking, over a period of years, in excess of 40 million investment. A lot of money, having to persuade somebody to do this based on what we think is the right thing to do. But it was successful. And what I'm talking to you today is specifically about that change. So from 2021 to where we are now, what have we done and what difference has that made to, as I say, patients and the NHS? So next slide, please. So I just wanted to very quickly talk to you. I did send you a briefing paper, so I'm going to keep this brief, but you can ask me any questions. So what were the challenges and opportunities? Well, the challenges were we had a fixed endpoint. So people were coming in 2021. We've got to outturn them by 2026. So it's not a, we can let this slide, we can take our time. We've got like, right, you've got to get on with it. So there was no messing around. Then we've had people coming out of the global pandemic, people were tired, people were exhausted, and oh my goodness, we just told them one change, now we've got another change. So the whole environment didn't really facilitate a massive piece of change. The degree, the undergraduate degree for pharmacy was science funded. There was no clinical placement funding. The new pathway required these people to have developed clinical hands-on skills throughout the whole 5 years, not do academic learning, come in for a year, then do it. So there was no precedent for this, either in HEIW or anywhere. It was a new role for HEIW because whilst we commissioned the whole of nursing undergraduate, this is not about the whole of undergraduate, this is about specifically the clinical placements. So we had to persuade what we believed was the right thing to do, how that should be managed, and that was another business case to Welsh Government, which was successful. We are very pleased, and we got a significant investment. And I have to say, in Wales, I am really, whilst we are in financial constraints, I do think Wales and Welsh Government are very responsive to really investing in their workforce. And we've seen that through this journey, which is significantly different to my partners, certainly in England, not so much Scotland. So that was the environment we were working in. There's other strategic documents I won't go through, but these were all also enablers, because as we were doing this change, these were supporting the change and helping us drive what we needed to do. Our strategic pharmacy workforce plan, we identified in 2022 that it was great to do all this change, but if we didn't change the environment that people were working in, then they wouldn't be able to use the skills. So we could do all of this, and if we didn't start to encourage and change the skill mix, the environment they work in, we'd invest in them, and then they wouldn't be able to use the skills. So that was very much about creating a wrapper around everything we were doing to try and make sure when they come out in 2026, they have got that environment to be able to deliver on the skills. Okay, next slide, please. Okay, so I'm going to quickly go through what we've actually achieved. So undergraduate clinical placements, as I say, we secured funding, significant funding in 2021 from Welsh Government. We did a whole host of work with our universities, schools of pharmacy, which was Cardiff and Swansea then. Swansea, oh, that's another add in the mix. Swansea was starting new students in 2021 as well, so we had a new school of pharmacy. But we did a lot of work with the universities to really build that partnership arrangement around the quality management of these clinical placements. We were really keen that this is not just about giving money, it's about quality. As our chair was saying, we want people to have a great experience in Wales, so they want to stay in Wales. We don't want them to have a poor experience. So we were really passionate that not only do we need a strong partnership to be able to make sure they get the right experience, clinical experience in 4 years, but when they outturn into the 5th year, which we are accountable for, that they are ready to come into our year. So we're not trying to sort of squeeze everything into the 5th year to get them out. So it was really important that was a good, strong relationship. But that took a lot of work because it was something new. But where are we now? So over 1,000, nearly 1,300 students have benefited from funded clinical placements since 2022. And that's come out as over 3,000 weeks. And that is growing as we go forward. And the first graduates through this programme will come out now, July this year. Gosh, already. And they will be entering into our foundation programme. So if I could go on to the next slide, please. So I talked about the pre-registration programme in 2019. This is now called Foundation. GPHC decided to change the name. So it's that in another guise, but with the new learning outcomes. I think what I said before about the hard work we put in 2019 meant when we had to start thinking about this change, we'd already built that relationship, we built the trust. So it's been, saying it's easy, but it's been a lot easier
to be able to start thinking about how do we change now to deliver on the new learning outcomes, which means they can come out as prescribers. We had to go through a huge GPHC regulator accreditation, which never happened before with that 5th year. And I have to say, we're the only nation, I'm very proud of it, that got through that accreditation with no conditions. There was one condition, but that was about a multi-UK, every UK nation got it, and it's about transfer of students across the nations. So we were the only ones. And we do get 100% fill rate and the best pass rate across the UK. So very, very proud of that programme, but it has been a journey since 2019 to get us to this point, but still really highly recognised. Next slide, please. But when we started this journey, we talked a lot about people going from when they go into undergraduate right the way through to registration. But what about the people who haven't had that opportunity? What about them? What about the existing workforce? We can't just say, well, guys, you'll have to come along at some point. So we had a big programme of work to make sure we upskilled our existing workforce with the same skills as our new registrants, so nobody was disadvantaged. So we started in 2022 with a post-registration foundation programme. This is for our newbies who are coming out, who haven't had that new learning pathway. They're coming out without IP. So this was really important to me that they didn't feel disadvantaged. So they got a supportive programme over 2 years, which then actually meant they could get IP earlier than they would have done through the existing pathway. That's been really successful. The next phase of this is, that's great for those, but there's going to be more coming out in 2026 who are IPs. How does that morph and change to support them in their early years of prescribing? So on to the next slide, please. But then there was the guys who have been practicing for a number of years, and then how do we get them to be able to be prescribers? So we had a programme of work after those last 621 that actually then started providing them not only with the skills, but also we started to support them after they developed the skills as well, because you can get a badge, but actually it's how do you use that badge and how do you continue to develop and change your scope of practice. But I think with this, the biggest impact is the fact that you can see it there. Certainly in primary and community, there's been a big change of people's patients' access to services. What we're really proud of in pharmacy is the fact that when you train these people, they're using the skills for the benefit of patients. We do know historically sometimes people get prescribing and then they don't utilise them for lots of different reasons. And it might be the environment they work in. It isn't always because they don't want to. But we are showing a shift. So patients are getting services closer to their home, not having to access primary care or a GP, which is what they were doing previously. And that is growing all the time, year on year. So really proud of that. And we, as I say, we continue to support these people. We don't just train them, leave them. We are building networks of independent prescribers who come together to look at case studies and consider their own ongoing development. One thing I just wanted to say here as well is that over this last period, we have now got HEIW approved training sites. So in every health board, every site in every health board, we have approved training sites. In addition, we've got 200 community pharmacies, 75 GP practices, and they are currently supporting over 1,000 trainees across the system. And that's grown exponentially over the years. So a big thank you to our partners and stakeholders who are really fully engaged with this. But again, it comes back to that stakeholder engagement. I can't emphasize how much that's been an important part of our success. So next slide, please. I hope I'm not going over time because I could talk and talk and talk. But I think it's really important to remember, as well as all the hard effort I've made, my team made to really make this happen, this would not have been possible if we hadn't had this robust programme management process that we used to make sure that we did succeed. And our program manager was always here in our rear saying, have you thought about this? Have you thought, not okay. So that really kept us on track and stopped us from just getting really excited and rushing off and doing things. We fully engaged with our stakeholders. We brought them on the journey all the way along the line, either in steering groups or short life working groups, as well as that included patient representation as well. So it wasn't just our professional partners or employers, it was patients who were on that journey with us. And I put a little line here about financial, but you know what I'm really proud of? You know that 43 million we asked for, but we're still within budget. And considering that it was a bit of a, what would this look like? I'm really proud that we've managed that within budget. Okay, next slide, please. I'm not going to talk much to this slide. I think this is just for information. So these were all the aims and objectives in my strategic outline case. And I sat back when I started this paper and looked back and went, oh, tick, oh, tick, oh, tick, oh, tick, oh, tick. So up until now, it's not a done, but it's where we are now is green. So this is never done, is it? This job is never done. So that was more for information. So next slide, please. And it isn't done. So we now have to think about what our next steps from now until 2030 and beyond, but we've still got a lot of work to do. I talked about the next phase of Post-Reg Foundation. How do we support those new guys who've had 5 years, who've had clinical placements, they're coming out as prescribers? I want to make sure they've got a really good supportive wrapper around them so that they don't get chucked out there and then they haven't got that time to build their confidence and competence to do what they can do best for patients. We've got to finish the IP training for most of our existing workforce. We've got Bangor School of Pharmacy. We've got another School of Pharmacy appearing now on the horizon in September. They're welcoming students in. What does that mean? How do we consider that? How do we start thinking about how many? So I said we've got a really successful foundation program, which is 100% filled. But we know we aren't training enough of those to meet workforce demand. So we've got to start thinking about how do we increase those numbers that do meet workforce demand? How do we manage that financial forecasting for our undergraduate clinical placements, which I've just talked about, another School of Pharmacy, and it's going up. Oh, what does that mean financially wise? So we've got to think about that. We've got to do what we said we were going to do this year, which is bring IP into the foundation year and successfully get people to register with IP independent prescribing accreditation. We've actually got to start thinking about the whole of our workforce, which we haven't ignored in this journey. I've talked a lot about pharmacists, but our pharmacy technicians, there's going to be a review of their initial education and training by the regulator. But just so that for your assurance board, we believe, because we have another leading program for our pre-reg pharmacy technicians, which we pitched at level 4. We didn't have to do that. Level 3 is what is required. But guess what? The regulator's looks like changing it to level 4. So guess what? We've done it. So thank you very much, regulator, but we knew that was going to happen. And we do need to think about how do we bring our pharmacy technicians along, as well as our support staff, not to fill a gap. I don't like to say fill a gap, but to change the way they work so pharmacists can change the way they work. And then we've got to continue to successfully monitor and think about that strategic workforce plan, continually making sure that environment is where we want it. So next slide, please. So on conclusion of my reflections, as I sat trying to think about everything that we've done in the last 6-7 years, is how did we get here? How did we manage to have this success? And I do think it is about having visionary leadership, innovation, collaboration, and resilience. It needs a lot of energy and a lot of vision. We've implemented the biggest change in pharmacy education in decades. So last time we did that was in 1997, and that wasn't my job to do at that time. And that complexity of change and embedding new frameworks. But despite that, as I said, HEIW have given us the platform, strategic governance, the stakeholder collaboration and continued investment that have positioned us in Wales as the leader in pharmacy education transformation. We are seen across the UK with my colleagues, they look at us in envy. I think they forget how hard the work has been as well. Because it's lovely to look at success, but you forget about the journey you've been on. But the next 5 years is stabilising those changes, making sure as we keep benefiting from the skills enhancement and setting the stage for the next few years. And then next slide, please. So it's been hard, it's been a lot of effort, but those rewards are really worth it. And our journey isn't complete, but we are in the best position to maximise those changes. As I move into retirement, I'm going to be up at the top of that building and I'm going to be looking at the landscape down there and just enjoying the scenery and watching people on the road. So thank you very much for listening.
Well done.
Margaret, you were one of the first people that I met when I was the interim chair in the setup period. And I can remember coming to your good offices on North Road. And what struck me was the very professional attitude to the education and training that was going on then. They say if you want to get anything done, find a determined woman. Well, that was the other observation. This was a very determined lady. The other thing I would say is that you build teams. And you also put up with me being very embarrassing, telling the Royal Pharmaceutical Society it was time they got a grip in the 21st century. I said carpe diem, seize the day. Well, on today's evidence, I think we can safely say that you certainly carpe diem, right? You certainly seize the day. I use a phrase which is some people think is offensive, and that is the adequate phrase, right? I think what you've demonstrated beyond any doubt at all is that you've been more than adequate.
Thank you.
Right?
Thank you very much.
And you underestimated in your presentation, I think, your ability to build a team and make other people do really good things. There's a horrible question, say, to what extent are you responsible for all of this? And the answer is you are very responsible for all of this through making sure other people can express their skills. So on behalf of everyone here, thank you so much. Diolch o galon. Job well done. I just hope that when I saw your last slide, I didn't quite know whether it was, is this a 20 or a 25 mile speed limit? You've taken this at rocket pace, right? So no challenge really to your successor, but I'm sure your team will have learned an awful lot from you. So thank you ever so much. And I don't use the word retirement. I hope you will really enjoy the next phase of your life.
Yeah.
And I think, Alex, you want to say anything?
Well, we had the opportunity to say a few words at the end of your view, didn't we, Margaret? That's just so token of our appreciation.
Oh, thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you.
I just wanted to say maybe, and thank you for your kind words, Chris. But I did want to say that maybe, and I apologise if it didn't come out, but you are right. You know, I have been. I'm not going to get. I have been extremely privileged to lead a fantastic team. I could not have done it without them. So whilst that presentation might sound very much about me and how I've done this, but you are right, Chris. You know, my team are the people who supported me to do this. You know, a leader is only good as the team around them. And I do have an exceptional team. And whoever comes into this post is really lucky to have that team. And they need to nurture them and look after them as they're my babies. But thank you very much.
Well done, Margaret. Thank you. The boring bit about being a chairman is I got to keep this lot rational. So 3.5 pharmacy.
Yeah.
There's a paper you've got here.
Yeah.
On another strategic outline case. You never give up, do you?
No, that's
Oh, sorry, strategic
pharmacy.
Yeah.
So basically, it's what I mentioned in the presentation. The strategic pharmacy workforce plan was really our wrapper around the whole of this strategic outline case, because we recognised we needed to create the right environment for people to be able to thrive with their new skills. So the paper in front of you is a very brief paper which only articulates the update between January of this year and May, as we are now. It's outlined under the themes of the benefits realisation that we are hoping to achieve through that strategic workforce plan. But it does encapsulate everything that we do. It doesn't work in isolation. So I think the one thing I wanted to say, it is very brief. It is just a 3 or 5 month update. But what I've been discussing with the team is that in the last 2 years since the plan was launched, we have achieved what we hoped to achieve in the last 2 years, but we are at a bit of a, a point now where we probably do need to go back out. And what I've said to one of my team is, let's go back out to all those stakeholders engaged with the development of the plan in 2023 to 2022 to 2023 when we launched it, to go back out and just have a look at where we are now. Is it still fit for purpose? Is there other things we need to refresh, goals and actions we need to change? So whilst we're in a really good position, I think now we're in that we have to sort of have a bit of a refresh and a re-engagement. So that will be the next stage. So I think we've done a good job to date, but I think there's now just a bit of a review and check with our stakeholders and partners. So that was all I was going to say, unless there's any questions.
Any questions for Margaret? Margaret, this lot have noted your report. Thank you ever so much.
Thank you.
Diolch o galon.
Okay.
You're allowed to say it all.
Thank you, sir.
Really well done.
Thank you very much. Thank you for your time.
Oh.
Thank you. Well done. Well, my thanks on the child. Oops, sorry.
Thank you, Margaret.
Thank you. Bye. Bye.
Agenda item 3.1, approval of the NHS Wales Healthcare Science Career Framework.
Well, as Julie just said, that's a hard act. It really is. That was absolutely amazing.
That was special.
Absolutely. So, diolch yn fawr at ti, Cadeirydd, and actually I'd like to just recognise that Sarah, actually, who's actually been leading a lot of the work that I'm just about to just briefly share with you, is on screen. So big thank you to Sarah and the team actually supporting this piece of work as well. So back in 2018, the Welsh Government actually sort of published actually the Healthcare Science in the NHS Wales framework. And in that, it said that we needed to strengthen and develop the modernising scientific careers, education and training career framework for the healthcare science workforce to include specific education, training and clear career pathways from healthcare science associates through to actually consultant level. So as a result of that, that was a key piece of work actually that was undertaken by HEIW, and significant developments have been led by us in order to sort of aim for this. And this is actually the career framework that you've actually got in front of you today. So just actually, I recognise actually everybody has actually seen this paper before and actually has commented. So the key issues here, this is presented to the board as the NHS Wales Healthcare Science Career Framework, following feedback actually from a vast number of actually stakeholders. And once again, reiterating the importance of engaging with them, but also a big thank you actually to people within HEIW, including the board, of actually the changes that we've recognised there. So as you can see within this framework, actually this describes actually the first ever healthcare science career framework that actually really actually highlights to actually our professions, you know, what the opportunities are. No existing pathways or frameworks actually describe all the career progressions to date, but now we have it. And this is actually being welcomed actually right across the board in Wales, but as well as that, actually people in the UK and the Royal Colleges do as well. So this final version includes all the amendments to make sure that we start to socialise and explain these career frameworks to the rest of our sort of workforce in NHS Wales, because these people are key to the delivery of good quality and safety patient care. So I'm asking the board to approve the NHS Wales Healthcare Science Career Framework. It is excitedly awaited by the profession, and hopefully we can launch this in the coming weeks.
Questions or comments?
Can I, on behalf of the board, I guess, thank Lisa and the team for the extensive work that's gone into this framework. When you look at the range of careers that we've had to consider, then I have to say, and the careers necessary to supply and support, then I think we should applaud the work and the ambition within the framework. I welcome the comments that have been previously made have now been included. I'm pleased to see that we're equally looking at supply as well as support for existing professionals across the professional groups, and equally we're looking at a range of entry points, whether that be at level 4 right through. So those have now been considered, whether that's BTEC or whether it's apprenticeship process. We're looking at all options in order to support entry in, supply and retention within that. So I think it's a commendable piece of work, and I look forward to looking at the action plan and then the delivery of that and how we monitor that as a board.
Thank you, John.
Jane?
I wanted to echo what John has just said. I think this is an excellent piece of work. It's strange how you don't sometimes realise what a gap there is until somebody comes along and fills that gap and fills it so well. I can see how this is incredibly useful for people already working in services. It gives them an orientation, gives them aspiration, and helps outline what opportunities there can be. But also for future workforce, people who are thinking about what to study and what can I do with what I've studied. I think this is really brilliant. So well done.
Yeah, I can't say any more than my IM colleagues have already said in regard to this. I think it's an excellent piece of work. You always learn something from reading this and seeing where careers can take you that you may not have considered. So it will be exceedingly valuable. I note it's going to be launched, and I think it's excellent that there's going to be some media throughout the year, which I think will kind of keep it alive and focused on different things. So yeah, really well done. Yeah.
And I think it was socialised actually, not launched actually, it was socialised actually at the recent healthcare science conference that we had in Llandudno, and it is eagerly actually waited actually by the professions. But I think it's important actually, and Sarah and I have actually discussed this, that we actually give this the launch it deserves, because it is very focused and we didn't want to lose it in amongst actually a very large conference. So we're excited, Sarah, to be launching this soon.
Right. You involved the board all the way through this, right? So this has been it's easy to say, easy for us to see how it has morphed and followed some of the comments that we've made. So thank you for that, and thank you for the team and people who've been involved in creating this. So I'm asking the board, please, to approve the NHS Wales Healthcare Science Career Framework. Yes, thank you very much. Can you thank the team, please? Right, Glyn. It always comes down to the money in the end, though, doesn't it?
Well,
Yeah.
yes.
So it's not whole money anymore; it's called resource, isn't it? So this is your revenue resource plan for 25-26.
Thank you very much. Thank you. So this plan builds on the IMTP that the board approved back in March, where we set a balanced financial position when in submitting that IMTP. That came with a level of financial risk. So this paper effectively translates that high level plan into individual budgets that, subject to the board's approval today, we will then delegate out to budget holders within HEIW. So the paper sets out our approach to how we set those budgets. So a large part of it is based on the education training plan that was approved by Welsh Government for 25-26. So we've used that as the basis for setting a lot of the budgets. And that assumes things like historic fill rates rather than necessarily commissioning at 100%. So again, we think that's probably a more realistic reflection of the level of funding that's needed this year. Paper also sets out how we set some of the other budgets, which I'm happy to pick up questions on, but I won't go into any detail. In terms of just drawing a couple of things to the board's attention, one is that we have a reserve. That reserve includes some funding around the lease on this building and returning some of the funding to Welsh as part of the lease accounting arrangements. But I suppose the most important bit to draw your attention to is in setting or acknowledging there was a level of financial risk in the plan, we've effectively set what we think are realistic budgets for budget holders, but we've established what we've described as a negative reserve of about £900,000 this year, which we will need to recover during the course of the year. We applied this approach last year. It was about £1 million last year. And effectively what we did was, as and when we identified areas of savings, slippage in spending plans, or typically where there are underspends in some of our commissioning of education and training, we use that to offset that negative reserve in the first instance. So we've applied the same approach on the basis that this gives budget holders what I think is a realistic budget to work within, and essentially we're holding that risk corporately until we identify those savings during the year or slippage. So that was the first part. The second risk that I just wanted to draw people's attention to is around those Welsh Government policy changes on the bursary and tuition fee increases. So Welsh Government have given us some funding this year to cover those increased costs, about 5.1 million that we've had added to our budget. So we've incorporated that into the budget setting. Our current estimate of the likely uptake of the bursary this year and the tuition fee increases that we'll implement for this academic year, we think are probably around about £4.1 million higher than the funding that we've received. Now, Welsh Government have acknowledged that there's a financial risk there, and they've agreed that any excess cost around those policy changes they will underwrite. However, in doing that, they would want us to, where possible, mitigate any of those costs ourselves during the year. So there's an element of, as we go through the year, if there are things that we're able to identify in terms of savings or slippage, having offset that negative reserve, that we can use to offset increases in those policy changes, they would want us to do that before we go to them to ask for additional funding to cover that risk. So that's something that we will constantly remind the board of in our reporting, and it's just something to be aware of when we set the budgets at the start of the year. So it's helpful in the sense that they're underwriting that, but there is if you like, there's a joint management of those financial risks. So those are the things that I wanted to draw out. Obviously, it's here for approval, and subject to the board's approval, we will delegate the individual budgets out to budget holders, as you've got. Doesn't really present itself very well in board books, but in admin control. But you've actually got the budgets that will be delegated out to each of the executive directors there, just for information. So happy to take any questions or comments. Thank you.
Any questions?
Yeah, thanks, Lynn. It's very clear, apart from those tables, but that's fine. Can I just talk, when you talk about the budgets being delegated, does that mean that all executive directors or budget holders have signed off those budgets and accepted those budgets with the various caveats and expectations?
Yeah, so we've used the last few weeks in between approving the ITP and bringing this paper to the board to go through the sort of detailed budget settings. So individual executive directors have had sight of these budgets, are aware of them. Obviously, the next process will be, if the board approve these, that Alex as chief executive will then delegate those budgets to each of us to formally sign off.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Glenn. Thanks. It's a very helpful report. It sets out all the scenes in terms of the risks and issues that we're facing, but also how you're handling sort of the risk. I also, sort of welcome the fact that you've already engaged with the budget holders in terms of developing and signing off figures and the budgetary letters at the end stage, really, after we approve the board. I saw the question is not really for us today. It's about Welsh Government in terms of how they're probably managing expectations type of thing, which is why they've only partially confirmed the funding to date on the bursary and tuition fees. Now, it's probably their behaviour with us type of thing. And if you reflect on the fact that they've not yet released the 24-25 payroll funding, and I guess I'll be assuming that they'll soon be one of 25-26, given the announcements last week. So I think it's probably more to do with them than with us. And I think I've got reasonable confidence that that money will come through. Just like you have to evidence it later on in the year, isn't it?
Yeah, that's right. And I mean, with the 24-25 payable, what they tend to do is fund it non-recurrently the first year, and then just working through any sort of variations and issues, they then make it recurrent the following year. But you're absolutely right. To the reader initially, you might look at that and think that's a significant risk. I think in terms of pay award funding, Welsh Government's approach has always been to recognise the true costs of the pay award and to fund that, so that it's one less thing for NHS bodies to have to sort of concern.
It's already publicly stated in the allocation letters about they will fund it. It's they held it centrally and then release it in the year again.
Yes, that's right. Yeah.
Any other questions?
It's a very small number in the relationship of the entire budget, but again, echoing some, Alan's point around Welsh Government, an inflationary uplift of 0.5% doesn't go very far. Might be nice if inflation was down at 0.5%, but I recognise that's a small, tiny risk in comparison with the others, but it's something else that will need to be managed potentially.
Yes, I think last year we had no uplift for non-pay inflation, and yet we had to manage. We do manage inflationary pressures. This year it was 0.5%. I think for health boards it was 1.77%. Both of which, if you compare it to the current consumer price index, are lower. I think the rationale would be that they've looked at specific things that they think drive inflationary costs in NHS non-pay budgets, and they've taken a view on what they think that might be and what is also affordable.
Thank you. This is a very clear paper, Glenn, and it's good to see that we're continuing with the approach that we've taken in the current year. We're managing within our budget, but also ensuring that we spend every penny we possibly can on training and developing our workforce. I think you've given us confidence as a board that we can take this approach in current year, and I have pretty good confidence that we can continue to do so in this coming year.
The one bit you mentioned is the spreadsheet and its visibility on the gobbledygook. What's it called? Admin control.
Yes.
For some, I know those spreadsheets are a world of enjoyment. I found them very difficult to read on this on the view we have. So, can you look at an alternative way where you either decide that independent members can access it at request, or another way of publishing those spreadsheets, because the columns just fall off.
Yeah. We'll discuss it. That's how.
I think the formats went off when it went to PDF, and then the PDF is absorbed. So they can cut PDFs will not.
Can we just sort that technical thing out, right? And for some, that'll be, mean the world. Yeah. Okay. So, can I ask then, please, that we agree the methodology utilised to establish the 25-26 delegated budgets and reserves? Have a good agreement. Thank you. Note the financial assumptions are set out in the IMTP, and note the financial risks outlined and agreed proposed management of the risks during the financial year. Have you got anything that's on the corporate risk register from this?
There's nothing directly on the corporate risk register around the financial position, but at the moment we're forecasting a break-even position.
Right. Okay, thanks very much. So now we go on to 3.3, development of an education strategy.
Okay, so this sets out the project initiation document and sets out a proposed approach to the development of an education strategy for HEIW. And the key aspects of this are that we are recommending a two-phase approach which spans 2 IMTP periods. So the current one and then 26-27, and that's in recognition of the scope. And we want to develop a strategy that will be appropriate to the needs of the whole sector across a range of different learning groups at different stages of their career journey, from awareness to retirement. And so I'm presenting that for the board to note the proposed approach, its both scope, the timetable, and the governance arrangements that are set out in the PID.
Thank you. Board members have read this paper. John, do you want to come in on this?
Yes, thank you, Chair. The more I read the documentation and the more we discuss the education strategy, the more I realise how imperative and core this is to us as an organisation. This is a critical piece of work. I think it's welcome that comments from previous board developments have been incorporated, but we need to get it right. And I think we need to ask ourselves, how do we ensure that we're able to apply a future innovative lens to this strategy? Because this is what we're trying to do. And as an educationalist, if someone said to me, John, what is education going to look like and what will it need to look like in 10 years' time? That's tough. I'm not sure I know. But that's what we've set ourselves. So we've got to make sure that this is right, and we've got to use resources and develop ourselves in order to do that. And I think it's board responsibility to that, although Ian and Dorothy will be leading us with that. So I welcome the paper. However, there are things I think that we need to consider at this stage. I think we need to think carefully about the 2-year timeline. I'm not sure about that, but again, we can discuss that outside. Are we being too ambitious in setting this within 2 years? I don't know. I think we need to think about it. But when we think about a system that we're looking, I think the document talks about 5 to 10 years, I think it is, as a strategy. One would hope, if nothing else, in our current naivety of what that will look like, one would hope it would be a far more integrated system in terms of the workforce that is needed to deliver the skills that we need across local authority, social care, and health. That's a challenge. That's regulatory challenges. You know, we've got regulatory challenge with the BMA, the General Dental Council around dental therapists. They're all, even in nursing around the RNAs, we've got regulatory challenges. And we've got to try and navigate our way through that to still come up with an education strategy that's innovative. So I recognise that, and we've got to navigate somehow our way through that as to how we're going to do it. But in that integrated system, what I think this document needs to focus more on is the whole system. If we look at the communication strategy, there's no mention within there about going to GPs, going to dentists, going to community, going to primary care. It's all secondary care focused. So I think the document equally, in terms of our strategy, needs to think more around the stakeholders being the whole system, not just what is noted there. And the other thing I would say, it talks about key drivers, I think it is, and it mentioned them a few times. It talks about demographic changes, it talks about technological changes, it notes them at the start. I think there's 5 or 6 points. For me, those are important, but what will drive the education strategy surely must be what service models our workforce will be working within. Now, it does talk about care models, but I think that's a key driver. What are the service models going to look like in 5 to 10 years' time? You know, we talk about care closer to home, we talk about community care, we talk about primary care, we talk about the pharmacists being far more key and their role within that. So I think what I would ask us to consider, and I'm saying this as us, it's us as an organisation, we need to give greater emphasis, I think, to service and what those service models will look like. Over and above the care model, what will that be like, as opposed to just the demographics, and navigate around some of the regulatory issues, as I said. So, and my last point would be probably the user. So we talk about the learner, but also the public as the users of this document, because they will benefit from the workforce development also. I applaud within the document the emphasis on quality. I did a search through the document on the word quality. It comes up regularly. So I welcome that. I think that's important because that should be our driver. It's about quality provision and what we see in terms of a quality workforce around supply and existing models. So I think I leave it there. There are some concerns. I think we need to put aside some of our existing structures, the academy, etc. We're going to do that for a period of time. And will that be fit for purpose going forward? I'm not sure. So I guess my exhortation would be, let's put a future innovative lens to this. And as a board, let's see how we need to develop into this space also, that we've got a clarity of what we want to achieve, recognising that this is absolutely core for us. Thank you, Sharon.
I agree with everything John has said, particularly in the point he made about almost feeling as though it's tying into how we do things now, and the specific mention of endoscopy, for example. And I just think that's tying our hands too much. So the bit that maybe I do slightly, the point I was going to make is the time scale. I think it's going to be a real trick here, in my view, to have a strategy which is adaptable and meaningful. But if we don't set a time scale of when it will be, at least in a stage to say, here is the strategy, we'll never get there. So I do think that 2 years is challenging, but I think it is possible to do it with sort of all the caveats that John's already said. Does come across in the main paper that it is very secondary focused. I don't think that's the intention, but that's how I sort of read it. And that comes back to this idea of what will be the service model, which I don't think will be in a lot of institutions that we see it now. So as long as it picks those things up, but I do welcome the approach. I do like a bid. Sorry, I do, because you can see where you're up to, you can see where you're trying to be, and you can adapt it. So I think it's the right approach. It will be really hard and will need to involve a lot of people at different stages. And I do think the way Margaret outlined the approach that was done for pharmacy is one to take. She did say that stakeholder engagement is key, but it wasn't just get everybody in the room together and keep them there. This idea of having groups, focus the group or learning, whatever you call them, at different points, because, and getting different views. I think engaging students and people in schools who are the future, get their ideas in this, but it's a big piece of work. But I think this is the right approach.
Yeah, I echo that. I think the approach is right. I think the model is right. I think that sort of 3-stage horizon model is right. I think the mindfulness is in Horizon 2 can be tricky because it's where the real pressure delivery point hits. I also think that if you do sort of each stage over a 2-year period, it becomes outdated very quickly, and it feels the vision and the aspiration needs to be done very soon, taking on point both John and Judith's things. So my reflections on that is that, and how long we take, and we probably need to sort of be quickly to sort of set the scope, taking more into this. Also, we're saying about it working with existing budgets. I suppose, are we confident that that resource won't become a limiting factor in the momentum going forward? And going to stakeholder engagement that sort of Margaret did sort of out. I know learner and education agreements are covered in this sort of plan, but it's about more of the flow through of that, of the constant sort of stakeholder engagement. How do we hear the early conversations that actually shapes the strategy, the final strategy, rather than it just informing the front end. And also, I think for me, we've got a lot already happening across CPD, digital commissioning. How are we protecting that space for new thinking? And that goes a little bit with what John was saying around sort of, looking at that horizon, but really sort of protecting the space to continuously be agile in moving it along. Otherwise, we will become outdated quite soon. So it doesn't get too influenced by what's already underway, rather than staying open to transformation. And for me, the reflection that needed to sort of be built in along with the colleagues. But generally, I think, it's a thoughtful piece of work and one that I think we should take forward.
Yeah, thank you. I don't disagree with any of my IM colleagues. And for me, when we discussed this last time, I was struggling a lot with, what it was how we were going to take this piece of work forward. I think I raised some questions at the time. So I bet the same as Judith, I like a bid, and this helped me sort of put that framework and start to see how it can, notwithstanding some of the caveats that have already been raised. And again, I think that focus on what the future models going to be and our lead around the development of the integrated care models. We are where we are. We've got to work and change it, but the fact that kind of social care sits outside is, you know, that are we accepting that and carrying on with it in the future? Creates difficulties and divides, but really we should have resolved by now. We are where we are now.
We can't do that at HEIW.
No, I know that. It just feels frustrating in terms of where we should be for our patients.
Jane and I.
Thank you. I won't repeat what colleagues have said. I think we're in a fast changing world, and it's not going to stop changing. And what I'd like to see in there is a focus on developing innovation, research, curiosity, both in the educators and equipping trainees of the futures. We've got to keep encouraging people to be open to the way the world will shape us and the way models will change. We won't have a single change to a new model. People will see 4 or 5 changes in their 40 or 50 years of working life. So building those skills in to our thinking, I think is really important.
Yeah, no, really interesting comments and things for us to think about. So going to John's point, it is a bit of a limiting factor that we don't necessarily have that 10 to 15 view of how care is going to be delivered. You know, we think we know the direction it's going to go in, and you know, certainly when England was developing the long-term workforce plan, they had a really neat Venn diagram which said actually the workforce plan has to be based on the shape of care that's going to be needed, the shape of work that needs to be done, and then the shape of education, and that the 3 were overlapping. And that's always kind of stuck in my mind as being a really kind of good model to use in order to inform what we need to be planning from a workforce perspective. And obviously we haven't quite got that scenario. We're not going to have it in the next 12 months while we're doing some of this early work. So there is a bit of a limitation. However, I think actually getting into these conversations enables us to perhaps ask some of those questions and prompt some of those conversations as key parts of development and education strategy. So, you know, we're starting from one point, but that doesn't mean to say that we can't prompt those conversations to sort of flesh that out. And I think with any sort of, you know, long-term piece of work at the moment, we have got to think about scenarios, not just when we fix the future, because to your point, we don't know exactly what it's going to be like. So I think, you know, keeping in mind that it could be one of a range of scenarios, and maybe pinning that down to 2 or 3 to inform that kind of long-term horizon is what we've got to get better at doing, and then making strategies flexible enough to give us direction, but also respond to where we want to go. So I think that's part of how we utilise the 3 horizons model, really, to help with that thinking. I think, you know, Dawn's point around the money, then it is, you know, that is going to be another constraint that we've got to recognise, because actually this is not in our remit letter. This is work we think is important as the statutory workforce body for all the reasons we've rehearsed here. But it is in our remit letter, and so actually what our remit letter says is spend the money we've given you on these things first, and then if there's some left over, do some more stuff that you want to do. So, you know, we are having to look at, however, education training is our core business. So we have got lots of people in the organisation who've got education roles. So, you know, what we need to be doing is to say, well, we need to put in more time to do that sort of future thinking, rather than perhaps be, you know, focusing on the operations. So we're going to need to look at how we shift our existing resource into that space. And I suppose the final point in terms of, you know, the lessons from Margaret's experience is, you know, one of the things that was a real success factor with Margaret was we got a really, and Margaret in particular, got a really, really robust and strong allied relationship with the Chief Pharmaceutical Officer in Welsh Government. And that has been absolutely instrumental. You know, we've been on the same page, complementary approaches, really clear vision as to where we were going to go with that. And, you know, it's really felt like a proper collaboration between government and ourselves. And so with this piece of work, we've got to work out who was the sponsor that we need to be working on this. Because at the moment, we probably haven't identified somebody that we need to say, actually, can we be involved in this piece of work? You know, we need, because on the social care piece, that's a policy issue. You know, our education and training is through an NHS funding stream. You know, social care is funded through a different pot. So, you know, we've got to open that debate up, but with Welsh Government colleagues as well. So I think we need to find out who's going to really act as our sponsor, because it could be a number of different people. Maybe it needs to be a number of different people. But we do need that sort of really strong relationship, because that's part of why, you know, we've been able to build that strong, you know, history of being able to put forward cases that were felt to be credible to get the investment and to actually get the alignment with policy as well. So yeah, a lot of work to do. I agree with Julie's point about the 2 years. I think if Dawn's point about the 2 years, both of his point about 2 years, we've got to get on with it, I think, at pace, because otherwise, you know, we will, and also this is going to be really important in informing, you know, we know that, for example, you know, colleagues in NHS England are looking at postgraduate medical education at the moment. We know that at some point we're going to have to review our contracts again. These are all time-consuming processes. Having something that gives us some hooks to hold on to in terms of the strategic direction this time, which we didn't have the first time round, I think would be really beneficial. So, yeah.
So, any other comments? No. So, I think you've heard. This is a lot clearer. The importance of it is a lot clearer, and some of the hooks are a lot clearer. Looking at the landscape, we've got an uncertain higher education, an uncertain further education, an uncertainty about what the aspirations of the coming generations. All of this seems, but we also have, I think, a degree of uncertainty about the clinical models, the clinical services. And of course, someone said, you know, I think it was you, Jane, that we'll have 5 different changes in a career. I think we'll have 50. The pace, the technological, digital pace has changed. So he's trying to do something very difficult. So, but I think you've had a rich set of comments just from where we're at. I'd encourage you to keep the board as together engaged in this, because my reading of the situation is, if we fail to have an educational strategy, actually we're signing ourselves to a retrospective history. And we all know of organisations that are stuck in that vortex, and inevitably they wither in terms of their influence. I would say this is potentially the most influential piece of work that we will ever do. And it sets a pattern of behaviour for being interested, inquisitive, and determined to make the most of what we can for our students and for our NHS services. So, Ian, I'm not expecting you to come back on all these comments today, but can we, as independent members, and you've got 2 educationalists here, and you've got people with knowledge of the service and of business, and someone who understands the money. So I would say, as a group, to support this work, we're up for this. As independent members, as a board together, I think we've got enough wit to steer this into a really good place. And I think 2 years, definitely, I don't want to see this put into long grass. We need to get somewhere over the next 2 years. Okay, so I'm asking the board, I'm going to be asking you to approve this. I'm asking you to note the proposed approach, which we agree, and support the scope and to some degree the timetable. All right, and there's an open door for us to be involved as a board. Okay, thank you, Ian. I'm now going on to 3.4, National Management and Leadership Competence Framework. And this is you, Helen.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Chair. So I bring this paper today on the management leadership framework against the backdrop of, I think, an increased focus on the importance of leadership and operational management to address performance and productivity challenges, as well as those opportunities for service transformation and sustainability in NHS Wales. I think recent feedback, we talked earlier at the kind of the context, the recent feedback by the Ministerial Advisory Group and others over recent months really align with recommendation from other high-profile reports, which reinforces the importance of strengthened leadership and management to the delivery of high-quality services. However, to date, there's been an absence of a consistent approach and standards for leadership and management. So the report that you have today really provides an update on the work that has been led by NHS England on the development of a management and leadership code, standards and a competency framework, and underpinned by a set curriculum. This has been shaped through engagement with a number of key partners, including the CMI, and we in Wales, along with colleagues from Scotland and Northern Ireland, have been actively involved in the design and engagement. So the products that are involved in this, there will be a management and leadership code for health and social care, management and leadership standards and competence framework, and as I said, a curriculum providing quality assured and consistent management and leadership development offerings and resources. I think this is a hugely positive. This is hugely positive for us, as for the first time there will be a consistent offer which sets out both expectations for managers and leaders and the underpinning development that takes them through their career. We understand that NHS England are looking to release these products in the summer, which will be aligned to the publication of the 10-year plan in England, and there is some specific governance around the code for NHS Wales that Welsh Government are advising us on. But bring the papers there, and happy to take any questions, but really bring this today to note progress made on the framework, recognise the engagement that there's been to date, and obviously then the plans for us to take this forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Any comments or questions on this paper? Judith, and then Alan?
Yeah, thanks, Helen. I really welcome this. I welcome it in its entirety and what it says. I suppose my only one question was really about the code of practice and the sort of whether we can be proactive, because I don't know whether we have a view as to how this could be implemented in Wales, and can we then guide Welsh Government and sort of give them a view how this could work, as opposed to this feels as though we're waiting for them. Maybe it's just the way I've read it, because I'd like us to be proactive. We've got the expertise here.
Yes.
And you know, we could influence that decision as opposed to waiting, which makes me worry that it's launched and then we wait and nothing happens, and then managers in Wales feel, well, what's happening?
So we've been really active. So there's been really active engagement. So this has been through Welsh Partnership Forum a number of times. It's going future. So in terms of that socialisation, it's also been to our Culture Leadership Succession Board. Yeah. So from a Welsh Government perspective, that oversight, that support, I think we're driving it. We see the benefits for it. It's because it's English. It's had that English. It's an English framework, and the code is the launch in England. That we are advised by Welsh Government that there's something that needs to happen from a governance perspective. But yeah, I think our plans are pushing ahead.
Okay. The concern is that how long that takes.
So now we're remit factors.
Yeah, I think it's just a formality. Yes. You can accept this on behalf of NHS Wales, it's not us.
No, it's just make sure that doesn't take too long.
Alan? Yeah, just reflecting on some of the things we had earlier on this morning about where stakeholder engagement is really key in terms of taking things forward. And I can't see that coming through at the moment. There's a certain level of engagement is taking place, but in terms of, say, first-time managers, mid-managers, how are they going to be engaged in the process taking forward and for it to be useful for them? As was the second part, which linked to this, is we've had the Science Careers Framework, which I think is a very useful document if you're in that field to understand and use. At the moment, documentation doesn't feel useful for first managers and mid managers. So is there any other product that's going to be helpful for them to use rather than just the what's there?
So I think taking your first point, I think we have a comms plan. We have a comms and engagement plan. We've been taking it through Welsh Partnership Forum. At every point, we're almost ready to press the button and say this is coming. There's been an issue that the deadlines have changed, some of the publication timescales. So that we're waiting now for confirmation that it will be launched in the summer to be able to then tell kind of the wider world that this is happening. But rest assured, the team are itching and have got really lovely comms to just say what benefits this will, what difference this will make, and what this will.
I've got full confidence you'll do it internally within the organisation. Yeah. I'm also concerned within health boards getting to the operational managers and departmental managers and them picking up on this, and I'm sure cascade engaging with a at level. And
it's really then how this will embed in other leadership programs. I think one of the benefits this will give us is a set framework that we can be looking at in terms of our national offer, and also then from health boards and trust perspective, how does their work match? And we'll be able to see where there's duplication, but where there's also gaps, and we're having those conversations with workforce directors as well. So I think we're on the cusp of having all of the products and then being able to really go live with it. But to some extent, because it's being developed by NHS England, we're waiting on their timescales.
Alex? Yes, we're just building on that. So this has not been our process. So if we were doing this within Wales, then we would have been in control of the engagement, and we haven't been. We've been a participant. So it's been very quick. So the speed at which this has been developed over the last 6 months has been incredible. It's been very much pushed by Department of Health and obviously Wes Street is. And so for us, it is about making sure that when we go to which is going to be a huge effort to communicate this and involve all of these managers, that we've got the answers that they're going to want. And one of the answers they're going to want is what's happening with regulation. That's obviously come alongside this issue. That's not clear yet in terms of what NHS England are going to do. It wouldn't be then automatic that anything or something might happen in Wales. And there's different levels of management that I apply to. But also, I think the timescale for implementing this, and is it going to become compulsory? Is it optional? At what point do we transition? So although it's not a new role as such, which we're having the same conversations about, say, the RNA, a new role, to what extent does that become the only route, or a one of a variety of routes? I think for these managers, we need to be able to give them some kind of confidence about, okay, this means that by 2030, we want everybody to achieve the competencies of their current role. When you next apply for a role, we would expect you to be tested on these competencies for that next level of management, and also to understand what, is there investment available for this, or is this about making better use of our existing resources, which will affect the pace? So again, things have changed across the border. There was a large budget associated with this. It was no longer. So how do we map what's already there so that we can actually deliver then on going out and saying, well, this is what's going to happen. We're going to have these 5 levels of competence, and we're going to be able to support that with a new curricula. We need to have some kind of idea of the feasibility of delivering that over what time frame. So we're in that kind of phase at the moment, Alan, and then I think it will be a question of, if we're going to adopt it in Wales, it won't necessarily be for engagement. It's going to be, and actually, we all feel as chief executives, because we update them regularly on this as well, the workforce directors, that this will be a huge benefit to people, because that really symbolises we are now investing in our managers. We're not being apologetic about having managers in the NHS. We're saying, actually, it's really important, and we need to give you the support that you need. So we're hoping that this is going to be a positive development, not seen as something that's...
I think it is a positive. My perspective is just how do you support those managers to use it? Okay.
I think we've done this. given it some good airing. I really welcome this. This is managers are a key part of the functioning of the NHS. It all grinds to a bit of glue without good management. And I think
Whatever their professional background, because I think
Well,
it
yeah,
is
yeah.
it includes clinical.
Yes.
Yes.
I just think this is a professional recognition and a way of proving merit. So we're asked to note the progress and the development of the code and framework, recognise HEIW and NHS Wales partners' contributions and engagement to this point, and consider the deployment plans and requirements for NHS Wales. Well, we've had a good discussion about that. And I would say, if we can, we need to get someone to say, do it before the summer recess. Otherwise, we're talking October. And then it'll be, there will be a different focus in the world from October. Okay, so thank you very much. We're now at 11:45. We'll take a 10-minute comfort break. Welcome back. And we go straight into agenda item 4.1, integrated performance report. Glyn.
Thank you very much. Thank you. And I will keep this brief because there's a lot in the performance report, which covers last year, 24-25 financial year. I think just to say, generally it demonstrates reasonably good progress across most of our IMTB deliverables for last year. You will see there are some areas where those deliverables weren't achieved and the reasons. So they're covered within the paper. The performance report also covers an update on education training, both in terms of things like uptake, but also quality, the quality of education training provided and where escalation has taken place. Also within the report, there is information on the latest sort of internal organisational performance. And we've also taken the opportunity to provide an update on progress against the Welsh Government Accountability Commission. So these come out in response to our IMTP for last year. And we've also taken the opportunity to provide a read across to our corporate risk register in terms of performance issues and risk as well. So that's a very high level summary of what's in the report, but I'm happy to take any questions or comments.
What a document. What a document. So have we got any comments or questions? Very clear. It's for me, if you wanted to know anything about the organisation, there it sits. That and the corporate risk register. Really put the two things together. Fabulous. John, you want to come in?
Chair. So can I just make some small points? The data is very helpful. And it's clear and it answers questions as you read through. So that's the one thing that I always go to and I keep a track on, and that's data and metrics in relation to communication and how that is influencing how we are perceived externally, etc. And we've discussed as a board how we need to influence knowledge of our partners and knowledge of the system in terms of our business. And if you look at that data in terms of the metrics around the social media, in terms of the LinkedIn particularly has doubled, almost doubled in the last year, which I think is clearly a good strategy and targeting the right individuals. My question relates to the website, because if you look at the data in terms of the website, to say the least, it's not remarkable. It doesn't. It in fact, it's going the other way. And I'm just wondering what is behind that, and whether we need to be thinking, well, do we need to be doing something different in terms of exposing what we do as an organisation?
Yeah, it's an excellent question and one we always have to ask ourselves. We had a great end of year review with Anne Harrods last week. Went through some of that data and the information on success and effectiveness of our comms in more detail. But do you want to pick up particularly the web page issue?
Yeah, so with the website, peaks and troughs correlate with campaigns. So where we've got something specific happening, so for example, we've got a peak in what is 60,000 in January, that aligns directly with the science training programme going out to advert. And we get a lot of traffic to the website to find out about it, to put your application in, things like that. So where we get the peaks is where we're seeing direct relation to social media activity, to going out and saying to people, this is what's happening, and we're driving traffic to the website. So where it's more standard is our operational everyday. And then when we get some extra peaks, it's where we're getting really peak interest based on
other mechanisms of communication and engagement. So it's a response, a positive response to other activities. So that's how we get the peaks and the troughs. But we're also looking at this year is redesigning the website with a two-pronged approach. So our strategic marketing, this is what HEIW does, this is the difference we make, this is our added value. And also making sure the website delivers operationally for our students, for our partners, for our colleagues, saying you can access workforce planning resources here to help you do your job. So we're really pushing on the website now. It's a lot of work, but the peaks and troughs, well spotted, John. But yeah, we keep an eye on it.
Can I just ask pretty quickly?
Sorry,
No, no, after you.
John, just
Yeah, so that is helpful, but I guess the question, which explains the peaks and troughs, but the question is, the trajectory is stagnant. So what can we do in order to attract people to that website so they have to go there for whatever reason? It's level. That's my only point. And perhaps we need to have something more around campaigns or something. Well, I've got to go to the website for that. So we draw people in just in order to demonstrate what we're. Others, they're positive about it. But that's the one that.
And just building on that, I was interested, do you do the organic search engine optimization? And does that get refreshed quite, does the search words get refreshed quite often?
And as part of our redesigning of the website, we're really promoting and working with departments to make sure content is search engine optimized. And that we regularly review it and it's kept up to date and it's relevant. We also use heat mapping so we can see where people are targeting. So for example, we've used the nursing and midwifery pages. We've revamped those, looking at, we get feedback via the survey on the website about what people are looking for. We know on most viewed pages, we take all this data into account. We reviewed our nursing and midwifery pages, updated them with the team, did user testing, and when we launched them, they had a 900% increase in hit rates. Our international nursing page, if you Google, usually appears above NHS England. We get a lot of organic traffic to the point I don't often do paid boosting anymore because algorithms don't work like that. But also social media systems are getting more technical in terms of algorithms. If they think you're repetitive, you're not fresh, you know, putting the same thing out twice, they will suppress you rather than push you. So it's all about fresh content, relevant content, and really targeting our stakeholders, which is the direction we're going in, but there is more to be done.
Because I think on reflection as well is sort of dovetailing our social media plan and having a knowledge centre at the back end of your website where you actually post video clips. You can start to sort of, you know, merge the sort of two, but it builds the traffic.
Yeah, we use YouTube for our videos, link through. Thank you.
Dear God, search engine optimization. There we are, that's another one for me. What's that in Welsh? Bwrdd guy.
Search engine optimization.
Search engine optimization.
Just put an O at the end of it.
Period.
It just flows off the tongue, doesn't it?
But just a follow-on thought from that conversation. What about Careersville? Because that's actually a communication tool of future workforce. Do we have data on access to Careersville?
The careers team.
Would that give us a holistic overview of how we're communicating if we had data on that as well?
Yes, with the targeting, you know, if we get how they're targeting and the hit rates in combination to any social media, we would.
Yeah, because school kids mightn't actually go to our website, but they might go to Careersville.
Yeah. So this just demonstrates when I said this is a Lewis Carroll report, right? You go down the rabbit hole and you end up in all sorts of places. So look, thank you for the report. performance report, and I think we've received it, and we look forward to another bout. Yeah. Okay. Director of Finance report, Glyn.
Yes, thank you. This report starts us off for the new year. So reports the financial position for the first month of the year up to the end of April. I suppose reassuringly, you'll see that there's a small surplus being reported, which I suppose from my perspective means hopefully we've either set the budgets reasonably realistically, and nothing material has arisen to date. This report sets out position on our revenue. At this stage, we are obviously still forecasting break-even position for the year. For the paper again, I think just contains some of the risks, but also some of the opportunities that may arise during the year that may impact financially. Within the report also, we've got a short narrative on capital. At the moment, we're holding our small discretionary capital allocation until we're clearer about funding position for CODI going forwards for this year. And then on the PSPP compliance, which is paying our invoices on time, we're currently exceeding the target of 95%. So again, happy to take any questions or comments.
Questions or comments? Will we break even this year?
We'll break even this year. Based on
and hit all our targets.
That's the plan at the moment.
That's the plan. Okay. Right. So I'm asking you please to note the performance against key financial targets and the helpful bit which identifies the risks and opportunities which may impact on the in-year financial position. Then,
yeah.
4.3 performance management frame. This is getting, you know.
Yeah. Okay.
All right, Glenn.
Yeah. Okay. Try to be as quick as possible.
Yeah. Go on. You're doing fine.
Okay. So having said how much you enjoyed the last performance report, we're now looking to update the framework, so that may impact on some of the content of the report, but hopefully in a positive way, really, and that we want to try and focus more on some of the the risks and exceptions within our performance, while still giving people the opportunity to access some of those rabbit holes if you still want to go down them. So the framework. The framework really recognises that our IMTP strategic priorities have changed this year. So the extent to which we measure performance and then measure the impact of what we've done, we want to focus on more in the performance reporting. In addition to that, we are conscious that we've had the publication of the MAG report and Welsh Government's response to that. And therefore that may potentially change some of the performance management arrangements with Welsh Government. But at the moment, we're working on the basis of the existing performance arrangements with Welsh Government. And I think it just recognises that we need to be constantly, like we're doing with a lot of things, we need to be constantly developing our performance data and performance information so that actually it becomes a bit more forward-looking in terms of where we think we're going to head and what the impact is going to be. So the framework here is very much for approval for the board to support today, recognising that actually I think this will constantly evolve, and therefore I would certainly want to review the framework in a year's time, if not before, if things change. I'm conscious we had a separate board briefing session on this where board members helpfully gave feedback, and we've incorporated some of that into the updated framework. So I won't say any more, but happy to take any questions and comments.
I think everybody appreciated that session, and I would encourage, being involved in the development, independent members get more confidence, and it makes, I think, the report fit for purpose in that the assurance is there, but also it gives the ability to celebrate things that are really excellent. So, are there any questions on this? No.
Yes, sorry.
Go on.
Sorry, Chair.
No.
Apologies. This is subsequent reflection from the board development, and I'm pleased to see that comments are included. Having read it a second time, Lynn, I'm just wondering whether, whilst the cover sheet says that this is about evaluation of impact, when we look at the actual document, there is one sentence there that says support evaluation. Are we robust enough in this revised proposal for our integrated performance report around our evaluation methodology? I'm not sure it comes through strong enough in terms of what we're aiming to achieve to assure board.
Okay. I mean, we could probably say a lot more in terms of what the evaluation methodology would be within the framework, and I'm happy to revisit that and to look at that in more detail. I think we recognise that there are, so if you take a lot of our IMTP objectives, we are looking at how we would evaluate those in terms of impact. And I think there's a development piece in that, if I'm honest with you, particularly around our ability to collect some of the data and the information, and that's what we're working on. But the framework, I guess, allows us to try and focus on some of that. But I'm more than happy to relook at that if you want the framework to say more around the evaluation methodology.
Well, as these are public documents, it may well be that the thread of evaluation is made a little bit stronger in the document.
So evaluating how effective we've been, I think, is a really important thing to be demonstrated.
Yeah.
Okay. So I'm asking you, please, to.
Sorry, Chair, I've got a tiny one.
Sorry.
Yeah, no, it was just around within the document somewhere it talks about, and quite rightly, that focus will be on kind of off-track issues. But I think we also need to be reminded of what was on track and what's going, to plan, and that we shouldn't completely lose that when we're discussing the off-track, because it talks about the commitment, using this as a motivation and commitment amongst our own staff and others, but also to highlight what we are doing, because we naturally go the one way. Just want to make sure we don't lose the other side of it as well.
No, that's a really good point, and I think actually somebody in the board briefing
sorry, I missed that board briefing.
Actually highlighted the importance of actually actually publicising our achievement.
Yeah, so it's really key to do that, I think. So apologies if I
No, it's a really good point.
We approve this performance framework then? Yeah. Thank you very much. 4.4, CODI update. Matthew.
Thank you, Chair. So the paper provides an update to the board on the CODI project status since January. CODI was launched on the 31st of March this year, and following the launch, there are issues of data quality and functionality which were impacting user experience. So we've made the decision to temporarily revert back to Intrepid to avoid disruption to trainees and to clinical staff and our own staff as well. Project moved to a red status. There's a constant corporate risk register. Some lessons learned being undertaken, which is described in the paper, and we've got a revised approach to relaunching CODI, hopefully in the autumn. So the board asked note the progress and current status of the project, and take some assurance from the lessons learned described in the paper and a revised approach to launch.
Thank you, Matthew. Any questions, please? Comments?
Yeah, thank you, Matthew. And I think I would like, because I know we do every time, or sort of recognition of all the work. So thanks to the team who've been working so hard on this. I guess my question relates to the revised plan and the assessment of September being doable, because to go, say, September, if there are issues, and I hope there won't be, the impact of a delay again. I just wonder, how are you as confident as you possibly can be that September is doable?
I am as confident as I possibly can be with the approach that we take to software development. There's a way that Agile works where you have estimates where you have to then get into detailed planning of those, and we've built contingency into the plan and built a little bit of extra fat into the plan with that as well. As we're going through refinements, we're finding some things taking more time than we expected, some things taking less time than we expected. At the moment, we are still looking like September's possibility, but we'll continue to communicate to the project, all executive team and this board if there are any changes to that plan.
Right, thank you.
Can I ask what the effect has been on colleagues within the organisation? As having to use the go back to using Intrepid, particularly considering we're out in the very busy part of the cycle. What's it been like, Tom?
I think the Intrepid system is one that people are used to using, and that was always the contingency plan if we needed to employ it. So I think going back to that, they were very equipped with being able to utilise that. We know it's not fit for purpose for the long term, but in terms of this busy period and the need to use that system, it addressed that, and people were prepared and ready to move the information through.
I was very taken by Sloman, who said at the launch of his report that he'd actually looked after 4 or 5 very big digital programs, and invariably they all went off track. And you measure success not by whether or not they stayed on track, but how well you dealt with when they went off track. So you know, I think being over optimistic is in all of us. So you know, I just welcome the fact that you've made the decision to build more time, and getting it right is absolutely the right thing to do. And I think all the board members would support you and the staff who are busy working to get it right, but the quality is important, not necessarily the velocity. There's lots of individual experiences can be pretty soured by having the wrong data, the wrong place.
Yeah, great.
Okay, so there are no other questions. I'm asking you to note the contents of the report, which indicates that HEIW has been assessed as a red risk on the corporate risk register. Will it stay on the red risk to the point where we relaunch it? Yeah. So we can expect it to stay on the red as a red risk until at least September. Right. Okay. And note the lessons learned following the launch and the associated actions for assurance. Yeah. Yes. And to note the revised delivery approach to relaunch CODI with further updates to the board during the summer months. Yeah, I think keeping us informed, especially if there's a trajectory that's different. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Governance, leadership and accountability standard. David.
Diolch yn fawr iawn, Cadeirydd. Felly papur i'w nodi ydy hon. Mae'n ymwneud bod ni'n adrodd ar ein cydymffurfiaeth gyda'r cod llywodraethu corfforaethol. Mae'r asesiad yn erbyn cod wedi gynnwys fel atodiad 1 i'r adroddiad. Nid oes yna unrhyw wiriad yn cael ei adrodd eleni. Felly dwi'n gofyn os gwelwch yn dda i'r bwrdd I nodi'r adroddiad.
David. Right, we've read this report. Are there any comments or questions? No? So I'm asking you to approve, to note and consider the assessment of the board's compliance with the Corporate Governance Code for assurance. 4.6, approval of the board for forward work programme 25-26. We've all read it. Can I ask your approval? Thank you very much. The key issue reports from the Audit and Assurance Committee held on the 10th of April 25 and the 6th of May 25. Jane.
Thank you, Chair. Most of this is for note. There are two requests to the board to approve. Firstly, to approve the proposed amendment to the standing orders. It's only a small amendment. And to review and approve the updated risk management policy, both of which are included in the appendices.
Thank you. Any comments or questions, Jane? No? Right. So I want you to note the content of the reports. Note the Audit and Assurance Committee meeting on the 10th of April. I'd like you to approve the proposed amendment to HEIW Standing Order Appendix 4 and 5 and approve the updated risk management policy. Yeah?
Yeah.
Thank you. 4.8, I'm asking you to note the in-committee decisions. 4.9, this is approval of a Social Care Wales Q4 invoice. Glyn.
Yeah, I'm just seeking the board's approval of this invoice, given the financial value which exceeds our obviously the chief exec, so my financial limits of £250,000. It relates to work that they do with us on the mental health workforce plan. The board earlier in the year or last year would have approved the grant funding for this work. So I'm asking for the board to approve this invoice. It's covered within our accruals within our 24-25 financial accounts. So there's no issue in terms of funding it.
That's a relief. Okay, are there any questions or comments? No, so I'm asking you please to approve the invoice for 324165 for Social Care Wales. Yeah, thank you. I'm asking you to consider now, please, the corporate risk register, given our conversations today and our debate. Is there anything you think the exec team needs to consider to change in the corporate risk register?
I don't think so. It's on there. What do you mean it's on there?
No? John, do you want to come in?
Can I make 2 points, Chair? One, the risk line, that's been read for at least 9 months and static in terms of physicians associate. We're still in a position, despite the actions and mitigating ones that are noted there, that we're in no change.
We're awaiting the outcome. The whole of the UK is looking at the line review.
Right.
It was commissioned by
That's fine.
West Streeton last year in the summer, and I think everybody's waiting to see what that's going to say about how we make sure that PAs are supported to be safe and effective practitioners going forward. Obviously we've had regulation, but because of that review, we are in a bit of a holding position.
Thank you, Chair. And my second point, it was a little bit alarming to read that under risk 13, I welcome the meeting that has now taken place between Lisa as Executive Director for Nursing and also the Chief Executive with the Welsh Government around the Registered Nurse Associate, because that's taken some time. But I read that we're likely to be in a position where the individuals will be, students will be registered on this programme via HEIW now, as commissioners, and legislative framework to support it will not be in place. Well, that's what it says.
So it's effectively, actually, we're not going to recommission it. These are the conversations that we are having actually with Welsh Government about the timescale. And I think actually previously we identified that there was a risk actually to that legislative time frame. And therefore actually that was something that we need to take heed of and did consider as a board, because actually obviously that was a risk actually to Welsh Government. So the commissioning is not actually commenced yet, and those are the conversations we're having with Welsh Government as to what
The
The
wording,
wording is not right, our second paragraph there.
Right.
Yeah.
We will obviously have a critical part that
Yeah.
enables that legislation to be passed in order to.
Right, so that reads, so that needs to
Incorrect,
be
yeah,
amended,
yeah,
yes. Because I thought we were going to be in a position where
No.
they're going through the process and still waiting for
No.
legislative approval.
That's what we've been conscious of and trying to
Thank you very
achieve
much.
for
So,
all this
can we
time.
can we post an updated
Yeah.
version of the corporate risk register?
Yeah.
Right, so it's following that, those comments. Okay.
you.
Any other questions about the corporate risk register? Okay, we're asked to note, we've noted the report and we've identified two issues. One has been clarified regarding the physician's associate, and the other is that the wording needs to be realigned to the registered nursing. No? Yeah, so it's okay. For noting 5.1 NHS Wales Shared Services Partnership Committee report. I'm asking you to note that report. I've received no other urgent business, and I'm happy to say that we can now close this meeting, and we will meet again on the 26th of June for the board final accounts and for a development session. Thank you very much, everybody. Diolch yn fawr iawn. Mae'r amser cyn hanner awr wedi dau.